Right, welcome everybody to the session Creating Autism Friendly Environments. I'm going to share a presentation on the screen and go through it for you. Okay, so this is called Creating an Autism Friendly Environment. So first of all, some of the background to this. The impact of the environment and on autistic people cannot be underestimated. I say that as a late diagnosed autistic person myself, and from many years of experience to this. I put in a clip there, and as I said, this is recorded, this session. I'll put it on my YouTube channel for you to have a look. But there's another clip there that talks about that's from the National Autistic Society called "Can You Make It to the End?" and talks about the sensitivities to noise, and I would certainly recommend that if you are interested in this type of work. Sensory difficulties, being hypersensitive to noise, people tend to cover their ears to cope with this. Is quite a common thing. But I also talk about communication is important, and environment and knowledge generally about autism and neurodivergent people. So as I said, the impact cannot be underestimated, and I put some quite extreme scenarios here. We're talking about distress, so extreme aggression. I've seen that myself, and self-harming behaviors. If you are affected by the environment as well, you are more likely to be isolated. You're not wanting to go into environments and not engaging. If you are particularly stimulated by an environment, you might be preoccupied by it and not able to focus. So lack of concentration, you're just totally distracted about things in the environment as well. So this will affect your functioning generally, and is more likely on a long-term basis to affect your mental health and create burnout, autistic burnout, as much as anything as well. So this not creating an autistic friendly environment can be limiting the access to support at schools, healthcare, in a workplace environment, etc. So it's not just me who talks about the environment being important. Dr. Luke Beebe, I don't know if you know any of his work. He talks about autism itself plus the environment equals the outcomes for people, whether that's positive or negative. And I would certainly look into his work if you're interested. And then we get to how bad is it really? How bad is the environment? So we're talking about the uh, not being able to see the effect sometimes. So it's, as you know, autism is what's called classed as an invisible disability. So signs of distress are sometimes hard to see and to find triggers for that. I talk about individual experiences and profiles are important. So when we're talking about environments, there's a person involved in this. So knowing of people's sensory profiles and an individual basis and know them individual is important. And I can't stress that enough because people are complex. Adults have had a life of all sorts of different things going on with them. And so it's important to understand the person as well as the environment. So what can we do? What can we do? And this is important because I think people stop to think, well, there's nothing I can do really. So my principle is any change to support autistic individuals is better than none at all. So doing nothing is not an option for me. And small changes can make some of the biggest difference and impacts to to a person. what you think is something big can have little impact. It's really knowing the individual and the environment that they're working in. So I would certainly emphasize that doing nothing is not an option. So again, where to start? So today I'm going to talk a bit about the checklist for autism-friendly environments. I'll go through that shortly, but what, as I said, individual sensory profiles are also important if you want to get an overall view of how it affects somebody. Particular needs can be different as well, so a needs assessment. And we're talking about formal and informal support is also something to consider. So I'm going to talk a bit now about the checklist for autism-friendly environments. Now, this is something that I created many years ago, and the concept of it goes back a long time. The background is there was a 2016 version which was endorsed by NICE and the National Autistic Society, and it was lucky enough to win some awards both locally and nationally, be nominated for those, the Learning Disability and Autism Awards 2019, I believe it was. So we've gone back a number of years now. So what I decided to do is to update this checklist because I've constantly been getting inquiries for many years about it, and people were quite keen on it. So it needed an update to look at further knowledge and thinking as autism and neurodiversity has changed within the last 5 years mainly. It's a free resource. And I'll talk about where it's available to be downloaded from my website, but it has copyright in place only for copying the actual thing, the idea itself, really. And the training, I'll talk about more about training that is available to implement this. So what about the checklist? What is it exactly? So I created it as a format that's easy to use in and it's for any environment, any space, any room, any surface, anywhere really. The previous checklist that was used, and I did lots of audits and lots of things at the time, was on waiting areas in GP surgeries, for example, communal spaces. I did an audit of using the checklist in a public library, quiet rooms, classrooms, reception, anywhere really. And what it is really, it's something that's a discussion tool to develop solutions. It's something that is a live document and needs reviewing to get the full impact of it. But in itself, what is it? So the checklist is divided into two parts. Part A is what I call the core requirements, and this is for everyone to complete. So the core requirements are an overall introductory to make your environment friendly. What I would call the minimum requirements for that, and part B is more for what I would call services who are set up to be more specialist providers, who say they are specialist providers in autism, ADHD, neurodiversity, and what I would expect from that. So what are the type of sections in there? So the sections in there relate to the sensory environment, all the different sensory challenges that may occur and you might want to consider, and I talk about in the checklist about communication methods, how best to communicate. Are you communicating in the right way? For example, is your signage clear? Is it accessible? Have you looked at everything possible? The knowledge and understanding is important, especially if you're claiming to be a specialist provider. I would expand it, expect certainly a basic knowledge of autism, ADHD, neurodiversity, and how how that may affect a person. The checklist is divided into a tick box, really, where you can answer a yes or no, or a somewhat. Somewhat means that you partly have agree with the statement that's there, but there needs to be some work done, really. You would only score no, really, if you're certain that no changes can be made at all, ever, really. And that would be, for example, if you worked in um, a GP surgery and the question was related to the sensory experience of taste, for example. You wouldn't be serving food in a GP surgery. So that would obviously class as a no. And be careful about the not applicable um, section on there as well. So what are the barriers to making these changes? So one of the values that I would say that you don't believe neurodivergent people need to fit into society as determined by the neurotypical majority. They need to make the changes, not us. Now, you probably come into this session today thinking, well, that's not me. But those values and beliefs are out there that neurodivergent people, autistic people need to fit in and not make and they need to make the changes. The belief that it won't make much difference anyway, so what's the point, really? And the attitude is that people can ask for individual accommodations if they want or need them. So waiting for the person themselves to make those changes. Now, as an autistic person myself, when I've ever been asked about what reasonable adjustments would I need, I don't know because I don't know what's on offer. But I would always say to somebody, well, I'll let you know when I see it. I certainly know what I don't want. But there's these barriers also. So time to do the checklist. Now, again, the reason I did it as a checklist is to create less time, really, and to make it easy to use. So hopefully you'll be able to find some time to be able to do it. Cost on those changes. Now, a lot of the changes that people make are not big structural changes. They're not, moving, for example, a bunch of flowers that might seem pretty, in a particular area, but they have a potent smell to them and might affect other people to another area that's not there. That doesn't cost anything. So some of these changes can be cost free. The motivation to do it. Now, again, we're all busy, we all want to do things, so the motivation is something to consider as well. And then we've got the perceived risk. That is where people's different sensory profiles can be almost opposite. So you've got somebody saying, well, I can't do this because that will offend that person, and the other person is more hypersensitive, the other person is more hyposensitive. Well, I would always go with safety first and risk. So the person who's distressed, and there's plenty of changes can make without distressing people. So finally, I'd ask the question, well, if it's you, what do I do next? So, as I say, the checklist is available as a free download on my website. which is www.aboutautism.co.uk. And also I'm available to do further training and develop those individual environmental plans, those audit things that people want to look at in more detail. So what I would say is please contact me. I'm Stephen at hello@aboutautism.co.uk. So next steps, and I've got any questions. Right, guys, that's the quick present presentation. We've whizzed through it today, but I would, if you want to ask me any particular questions, please do. You don't have to put your camera on as we're recording. Does anyone want to talk about anything? You can put a question in the chat if you want.
It won't let me put anything in the chat, but that was great. Thank you. I'll go and download your checklist now.
All right, thank you, Claire.
Thank you very much. That was great.
I'm going to turn the recording off now.